Recording is on.
Stop the recording to save it. Okay, I'll do that. Last time I had to use bots to help me heal the audio file.
How is audio harder than video? That's something I don't understand. Like when's the last time video fucked up this bad? But like I had to go and delete my entire Bluetooth profile on my computer so that my headphones would work.
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of weird?
I feel like it would be better if an AI was inserted at the OS level that just handled all that, and your prompt is, I want to talk to this guy. And that's God,
Sure.
I don't care what you do, make it happen. I need audio, I need video, I need it ready when I'm there. So thanks for coming along. I know I've burned a bit of your time quite recently as well, but I feel like we've had quite a breakthrough in data structures, and it's starting to feel like a very universal solution. So I don't know what the best way to go about. Shall I just sort of loosely paint what the distinction is, and then we can sort of sail in at whatever sort of entry point takes our fancy, I suppose.
I spent a couple days thinking like how I'm going to try and challenge it. So you might as well explain it, and then I'll if it seems like I still need to challenge it.
All right. So the issue with AI is actually the same as the issue with humans, and it's in context, to do with context. And if you think of an AI like another human, then it's actually torturous how little context we give them when we ask our questions. And even now in our video app right here, if I wanted to share with you a file, it would take us non-trivial amount of time and effort, and there'd be a couple of fuck ups, and it's not an easy thing. And it brings to mind that XKCD cartoon where even early adopters of the net still struggle to share files around. Right?
It's the same thing we were just talking about. Why is audio something that you need to have all this arcane knowledge about, right?
Right. And it's like, how long have we had microphones hooked up to computers, and why is this still a problem? Who knows, right? So this came about because of the UI that we were working on. The purpose of that UI was simply to surface the data structure underneath, which was Artifact, which is really just like, it pains me to say it, but it's just a glorified GitHub where it's like, I don't even know the term for it, but it's self-hosted. Like there's nothing, no data is outside of a Git repo. All data is inside a Git repo. And then the issue became, well, who are you when you're talking with an AI? What can the AI see? Where do agents fit in the system? And we were like, well, obviously an agent has to sit at the exact same level as a human would sit. Otherwise, that's not an agent. That's just a chat bot or a little app or something, right? And then it became, well, okay, how does the agent see what files I want them to see? And then the deeper question was, well, how do my buddies see what files I want them to see? And then you get like bespoke solutions, like you go into GitHub, you send an invite, you connect up to the repo, I tell you the name using my voice over audio, you search for it, you wait for the invite, you connect, I tell you, like it's
brutal. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal for sure.
Right? Like there's no good way to do that. And then so what in that UI, what we had was you could, whenever you clicked around or went somewhere within the app, so you dug into a repo or whatever, we'd take note of where you went and called that context. And then I started adding in the idea of you should be like, why should you only be able to talk about one context? Why can't I go to several locations and then be like, add context, and then go to a different one, and then I create this bundle of context? And then, so that's where the idea came from, where it became like, okay, so what's the data structure or the format of a context? And it became apparent that the only suitable thing for it to be is a Git folder, which is to say that it's basically a hash that represents a collection of arbitrary other hashes to point at.
All in the same repository or different repositories?
It can be bridged. That's the special thing about it. The context. So we started calling it a transclude because context sounds heavily overburdened, and transclude was becoming a thing. And the transclude acts as a folder that points to other objects that in Git repos that may include a Git repo itself. So it's like an envelope that can sit in a repo that can point to that repo itself, any other number of repos. It can point to files within the repo or paths or anything like that.
So basically anything that's hash identifiable in, like, whether it's a repo or a commit or a file or anything.
Anything in GitLand, this thing just represents a bundle of them by allowing you to have a folder, where a folder in Git can hold any hash identified thing.
Okay, I'm with you. Right. Keep going.
Yeah. What that means is you get this data structure. It lives at least in one place, so it lives in at least one repo. It may live across many repos. The proof of who created it is in the signature applied to the Git commit that made it or changed it. So it doesn't have its own independent signature scheme. It draws on the securities that the repo grants it.
Okay. So this is like almost like a more generalized form of a Git submodule, basically.
No. Because a Git submodule refers to
an entire repo, right? Like an entire repo checked out to a particular Git hash.
No, I don't know. I don't know why this feels right, but having this is like a meta object that can reference any other repo or collection of repos without being a repo itself. Like a repo couldn't contain other repos because a repo couldn't contain itself.
Right. It has to contain things that are like lower level in the tree than it.
Right? Yeah. But then, so like if you imagine that repos represent the vertical axis of structural order within a hash-based universe, then transclude represent cross-cutting.
Okay, I see. So you don't ever reference other entire Git repositories at a particular moment in history. You reference their contents.
Yeah, that's the trick.
Yeah, so I've been having this thought a lot recently. There's people at my current company that love using Git submodules, and I've recognized this problem that basically everything that's a problem at this company is how do we reference other code that we're importing into our thing, right? Like that we're building.
That's an important problem. You have your company, but
yeah, you have your your npm like package.jsons or your go.mods or whatever, right? You have like a billion different ways to do this.
Yep.
And the one way that feels like it should just encapsulate all of them is Git submodules. But every time you go to use Git submodules, it just feels weird and insane for some reason. And I think it might be because there's like a level mixing going on there where like you're saying, I'm not interested in the contents of this thing. I'm interested in the whole thing that I'm importing, right? And
Also, like a Git submodule is trying to, like, a repo is a mutable thing. When you talk about a repo, you mean the latest thing, and that can change over time, and you mean the ability to alter it. You never really mean a snapshot of it. But a Git submodule can only be a snapshot within its parent repo. And so now you've like sort of crunched.
I do think that there's some there is a bit of a mental hurdle for people when they're dealing with Git to realize that like you're managing the reference inside the Git repository, right? Like
the refs folder is the most vital folder in all the world, because the refs folder is like, what is the latest commit? And that is what all the battle is about. That's what corruptibility is about. That's like the whole thing is that refs folder.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's it. Oh, yeah, I want you to keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to like steer.
No, that's quite all right.
That's
quite all right. So recall that there's also the issue of chain joining, which is how does one repo talk to another?
Yeah.
And so I would say that the transclude can be used in any area that you want to talk across repos. And so let me count the ways that the transclude can be applied. So if I want to do actions, like transmitting actions and replies, I can use a transclude to represent a stack of actions in order that I want to pass over to another repo. It can then pull those in by pulling in the transclude. It comes in very hash efficiently because the objects are not altered. The objects on the source are now hash equal to what arrived in the destination. And so whatever deduplication is available under the hood, it's there. Sharing context between when you want to give a snapshot of the context to an AI, it's a transclude. The transclude itself can be shared. You can be in a chat like we are right now, and my system can be producing transcludes as I browse around my file system, and then I go send, and then in the chat, the transclude arrives for you. You now have access to what could have been my entire repo set, including my actor repo. You are free to browse it and access it using hash-based methods. You can indicate to me where you are navigating or pointing to within that arbitrarily large tree of information with another transclude. You send it back. We can have the concept of a shared state board where we're loading widgets or applications, because an application is really just data that we've chosen to interpret a certain way on our end. And now part of the transclude can signal that your client should load an app or a viewer or a visualizer, and mine should. You're free to load your own one if you want to look at weather a different way to me. And most importantly, I think you'll like this one. You can use the transclude to represent the equivalent of a package release, so that you can say this version, bang. So it's better than a tag.
Well, yeah, way better. Infinite. Right. Like, I mean, it's native to the architecture, right? A tag is always like a name that's floating on top of it, right?
Yeah. So it's Git native. And so when I want to load applications in this system that have been packaged and published using transcludes, I simply haul up the transclude, and that's its provenance intact, it's Git intact. There was no like, trust the Salsa agreement. Trust me, we ran it good. It's like, no, this is the data from the source. I have now loaded it.
Right. So there seems to be a bit of a chicken and egg problem with the idea of sending transcludes through a chain join, which is a transclude. And maybe there's not. Maybe I'm just not understanding it.
You can send a transclude inside of another transclude, but when it comes to chain joining, you're just sending the actions, and it's just a single transclude, and you're like, here's this transclude. And then like, because transcludes can have lineage, like this new transclude replaces this old transclude according to me, the producer of this transclude, then it's just a sequence and you check the logic and you're like, yep, this transclude is now these new actions. It passes in some new actions that I want, some new replies to some things that I sent, and that's the shared space. Like that's the middle of the Venn diagram. That's the chain join. Is these me and the other side are just sending these transcludes where each transclude builds on a previous one I sent, and it's sending them back plus acknowledgements, and it's not a transclude inside a transclude. It's the transclude with the.
I see. So that's the place where you're actually flattening it down, right? You're saying that like there has to be one place in the system where you stop nesting these things and you start flattening them.
That's where you ground out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's it. That's the thing. That's the trick. The whole trick.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great because I think it's like sort of stepping past even needing to define this thing in such a specific way as belonging to a chain, like a specific type of like runtime, right? It's like it's just, I think a transclude to me feels like a more general idea than a chain join.
It's super general. And like, I don't know why, but it feels like you can describe the whole world of information as Git repos plus transcludes.
Yeah.
And then that allows you to talk about the thing and also be the thing. So,
yeah.
But
yeah. So why I think you can describe it that way is because from the point of view of an individual observer that's like executing some sort of change to the mutable state that they're trying to maintain, like I can either be in control of the state or I can witness the state, right?
Right.
Like the witness somebody else's. So like what you're saying basically is that witnessing is a very special type of maintaining my own state. It's like maintaining the reference inside my state to the thing that I witnessed.
Yeah, which is the painful part of submodules, because when you try to use the submodule, a Git submodule like a repo, it really is just a snapshot of the thing, and you should treat it as such, right?
Yeah. And I think that's why people burn out on it, right? Because they don't understand that they're maintaining a checkout inside their code. They're not maintaining another Git module or like another Git repo in their code.
It's
right?
tempting to think of it like that way, and you want it to be that way, but it is not. It is not.
Right. So it's all down to like how convenient does the system make it feel to turn those references into real state, right? Like,
and because there's nothing in the way, it feels very natural so far.
Mm-hmm.
I think that another side use is that a transclude can immediately be NFT on a blockchain. Mm-hmm. So you can basically take all your repos, all your state, and then just go stamp, this is everything, which has been traditionally hard to do. Like you take your GitHub account and you're like, I want a hash that represents all of my repos right now.
Yeah.
Right? Shit out of luck.
Honestly, that is why the microservices pattern is a huge pain in the balls, is because now I'm like, I have these 60 repos on GitHub.
Yeah.
And they're all coordinating together to do one application. But like I have no cogent way of talking about the state that they're all in one environment or in one reality.
And you can't get like Codex to crawl across multiple of them because it's like, no, I do one repo at a time, sorry. And you're like, yeah fair enough, me too. But
and the other thing is like, because of that, all of the dependencies between them is implicit. It's in your head. It's like, well, I need to release these, then I need to release those, then I need to release those. And it's like, if you make it explicit, and this is why I'm saying, like, I think that I almost wonder why nobody's tried to say that the ultimate version of package.json is some kind of a Git submodule style system where you don't think about semver, you don't think about like implicit release dependencies. You don't think of this like giant state machine in your head. It's like press the button, follow all the references, it's done.
Yeah, that's it. Now, where it gets fun is that these transcludes can be used to point at things, and things can use the transclude to haul in information. And that's where we get into Xanadu land, because you can write a document that draws on information that's included in a transclude. Or you can have transcludes that highlight the relationship between two documents without altering either one. So the hash stays the same, but by making a transclude, because it's like a URL or a link is not actually a thing in the current paradigm of the web. It's a relationship. It's not a first class, right? But a transclude is a first class object, and so you can pass it around as such.
I can definitely see it, right? Like a link right now, if I'm writing a page and I link two different things, like what if the resources on the other side of those URLs break? Then my thing is broken, right?
That's
and
right.
you can't break a transclude in the same way.
For two orthogonal reasons. Number one, it's hash based, so it's eternal. And number two is that it's a independent thing that can be updated by itself, so you can actually heal it without cooperation or alteration to any of the parts that it references. And what I'm excited about personally is that we can use AIs to generate reverse transcludes. Like we can read an article and be like, this actually links to this. But in the current way of linking, we would have to modify that article. But in this way, you just make a link, and you don't even have to be canonical. You're like, I think that thing came from that thing. You can disagree.
It's funny. My main challenge that I was going to throw to you is the number one problem that any system attempting to solve the transclude thing is going to encounter is, what about people that are trying to obfuscate the origin of the thing that they're talking about, right? So like, what about people that like flatten the information on some sort of externally facing system that doesn't use any of the UIs that have been built for this? And it's like how, all the AIs at OpenAI talk in like not actually word strings. They talk in this weird data structure that is supposed to show you that this was generated by an AI, so that the AIs don't eat each other's output as much, right? But then if you go and like copy it into a Word document where it can only be a text string, then like paste it back, like it loses that context.
Yeah. And so I think that AIs they are the best thing ever at reverse engineering the source of information. Because they can sort of, like, their neurons are better than ours. They can light up what it reminds them of. And a link in this model doesn't have to be absolute correct, or, a link can include a transformation step where I can say it was this document plus this modification plus this pass through this snapshot of this AI, and then this thing came out. That's perfectly legit.
I actually love that, especially if you like show your work, right? Like you show how you're transforming it.
Yeah. But I really do believe that that's probably the biggest untapped gift of AIs is the ability to reverse engineer where the fuck all the things we think we know came from. And so that you can even walk through history and start correlating all the independent bits of snippets together.
It's like it's really turning the whole like AI is like a way of circumventing copyright on its head, because you're saying AI is a way of preserving copyright. Like AI is a way of crediting people,
exposing it, illuminating it, and then paying for it and being like, I read this thing, I liked it. My AI traced out these links. The general consensus on Linkopedia, or whatever the hell we call it, is that this guy was the first one, and so I'm going to pay my microcents over there.
Right. I also love the idea that it kind of dovetails really nicely with this, like, maybe you did. I mean, I don't know if you know the story of calculus, that two people on two different sides of the English Channel came up with the idea at the same time, because it was just
thing. It's a very common thing.
It was sitting there like ready to be plucked out of the ether because of the prior art, right?
Like all ideas, as soon as we are all sitting staring at the same wavefront, what falls next is going to be the same.
I guess I never really thought of it. Like, crediting people properly is the same problem as finding people who are working on the same thing as you from the same base information in a slightly different way.
Oh yeah,
That's
sure.
like,
Yeah. That's the same thing. It's just like right at the tip or in the past, but it's the
Yeah.
same mechanics, right?
yeah, that's really cool. That's an exciting idea for sure.
Yeah. And so based on those mechanics, we feel that we can meet the principles of Xanadu. We walked through them all and found no flaws. In particular, the strongest one, which is the one we've been chasing for years now, is the royalty system. And that was the one that was least developed by them, because that is a hard one. It also requires micropayments. We know we can do micropayments. We're sitting on a wealth of tools that we just kind of inherited. And I feel like we can, with the transcludes object, provide a super Xanadu where the prophesied Xanadu is a subset of the absolute one.
That's fun. That's really exciting. Yeah, I mean, I can't see any reason why what you're saying is not true. Not off the top of my head here. Like, I think that, to me, it comes down to like, if you reference something, like, can it transparently be embedded in the thing that's referencing it? Is sort of like the main idea, right? And then the other one that always bugs me is just if you reference it and somebody's done some work to make it not easy to reference from the original system,
right,
can you still do that? And those are the only two real problems to me, right?
I feel like those are solved by this transclusion model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like you found a way to describe chain joining and attribution, and I mean, just generally how like shared data in the system works with the same name, the same abstraction, right?
Yeah, and it's dead simple. Like, it's painfully simple. It's a folder.
It's not an actual like POSIX folder in your repo, though, right? It's a special type of like folder concept, or is it basically it is a file?
It is a folder.
Like,
it's a genuine Git folder structure, which is for Git is just a tree, which is an array of hashed objects which contain the name and the hash of the thing that they represent, which is sort of like a Merkle tree, really. But that's all it is, and it's actually like that's the minimal structure. I mean, you can't really take anything away from it without utterly maiming it. So
there's nothing else to take away. I mean, that's the simplest. Like, if you try to take away names, then
what do you got?
I mean, sure, you could refer to hashes, but like it's not meaningful to an end user, right?
No, it lost its meaning.
And if you take away hashes, you take away the content. So like, what are you gonna?
You're back at URL land, and that doesn't help you. So I don't know, dude. I'm just like, that's definitely the solution to, like, chain joining was not a separate issue, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Wholesale communication across repos was the issue.
There's still some like consensus concepts in there, right? Like a chain join as like the minimum structure necessary for two people to. It's like you keep calling it a shared space, right? In order for a space to be truly shared, it has to be like under no individual authority more than anyone else.
So okay, I can explain that, but it will take me 2 steps.
Okay.
The first step, consensus amongst repos. If the repo is considered as the source of identity, so like a repo commit is the only way that you can sign something in this universe. That's how transcludes are signed, by virtue of being part of the file structure of a repo. Then you can have consensus on the repo signature, because we can construct a way that a repo can not be valid unless the soul branch commit is equal and signed by this number of participants, which seems trivial to me. Like, I'm like, that's sort of the whole blockchain trick, right? That's just a hash. Can we all agree? No. Okay. Can we keep going? Yep. Okay. We all agree. And then that's the hash of the repo. So that's consensus on what the repo is, and therefore what this particular transclude is. But then when you want to talk about shared space, so you can now consider two repos under independent consensus control, which could be individuals or two separate groups or any combination thereof. Then the transclude becomes shared if both groups produce the same transclude. And then you're like, we have agreed and overlapped. And in that way, you can make a form of, it's not quite voting, but it's like weighted consensus, because if like all of your friends think that this link goes from this piece of information to that piece of information, then it's probably right. So it's like it's extracting meaning out of not complete consensus, because we always get consensus where it's like, 51% and that wins, but it's actually meaningful information, the 49% that didn't agree. And so this model allows that fluidity and actually makes it a first class information type. The fact that you've got the primary link and then you've got these derivations or degradations that alter it in some way, and that's meaningful.
Right. So this is like using the fork first idea that you've talked about before, where like it's always possible for you to say I'm part of the 49% that disagrees, and what we will do is not carry on with the 51% that does by forking the repo and saying that this isn't the truth anymore, and like carrying on and not participating with the original one.
Right. But the idea always was that you should be able to, the chance that you disagree with another person or entity on everything is pretty much zero. And so what we need in the world, in my opinion, is not that it changes the mechanics of the system in any way, but you should be able to just really narrow down on the things that you do disagree on, and then continue to get along with the 99%. And then that one tiny bit of information that's contentious, you're like, that is contentious and shall remain so. Let's get on with our lives.
Right. How does that represent in the system? I guess I've never really explicitly asked that before. If I've decided that I just disagree with this one particular join, and I agree with the other 90 joins that the chain is doing, does that result in two forks of the system that are like still agreeing about the 90%?
No, because when you talk about transcludes, the notion of a fork is much more diluted or weaker.
Yeah.
Because I think for a repo, you could fork a repo and carry on, and then you could periodically merge and sync between the two, so that you're like, here's our differences and here's our sameness. That's just the same issue as maintaining separate release branches for different architectures of a system. They disagree, but they largely overlap, and so we limp along. But when it comes to transcludes, forking's not hard. It's not a this or that. It's a this and. Like, the transclude space is different to repo space. Like, transclude space is the chainness, the linear chainness is much less meaningful in transclude space, because there are more statements that sort of get made and then end. Whereas chains like repos, the intention is that they are long-lived, like they go for many years and contain many iterations, and each one is sort of fought over and whatever. But transcludes are like flashes in the dark. They're like ding, ding. They're largely like done and then they stop. And it's only sometimes that they iterate forwards, because most of the time shared space is ephemeral. It's either ephemeral or it concludes. Like it reaches a point and everyone's like, okay, cool. And that's it.
So it's like by the time you've digested all the reified information in the transclude to use it however you're intending to use it in the consuming project,
Right.
like you no longer need the reference anymore. I guess I'm trying to, the andness is something that stands out as like I'd never thought of it. And it sounds like an interesting concept to me. It's like, obviously a fork is a very absolute difference between two things.
A fork is hostile, but a transclude, in a way, I feel like I'm grasping at this subject, so my explanations are not concrete yet. But a fork can be hostile and is often hostile, but a transclude can't really be hostile, just like a statement can't be. It's like two statements can exist and conflict and still just be there, and that's
right.
Perfectly fine. It more like you take the oil and gas reconciliation problem, like solving that with transcludes is like, well, we have differences here. Do we want to fix them? And then if you don't, well, you just have a different transclude than the other guy, and it just shows in your view, like the French guys thought this and the North Sea guys thought this, and we can't get past it. Let's have a meeting. But if they do match, then the transcludes are the same because they're hash based.
So transcludes, like when you're pulling somebody else's information into your project through a transclude, the idea is that it's always wrapped with your own interpretation on it, basically.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, like you in the oil and gas model, each oil counterparty would have their repo, and they would be cooperating on these transcludes, where the majority of them would be identical, and they're like, "Yep, perfect," and then a bunch of them diverge, and that's okay. But in our previous model, we were trying to solve that using blockchains where the dispute needed to be agreed upon. Like, you didn't have to resolve the dispute, but you had to agree what the dispute was for the next block to be made. But here, it's like each trade is a transclude, and it can reach reconciliation totally independently. It doesn't.
I mean, you're saying your view of the world might be completely incompatible with somebody else's, but that's still not a reason to not participate with them.
Absolutely. It's a reason to focus in on that and be like, hey, why is this, the regulator requires us to have the same view of the world, what's going on. But it doesn't mean that the system has to, what the fuck am I trying to say? Like, it's almost like it's opt-in instead of like a lockstep. Like, whatever the opposite of lockstep is, that's what this is.
Yeah, I would say the opposite of lockstep is like eventually, possibly never consistent, right?
Yeah, and that's okay. The system's not broken because it's inconsistent. It's by design. Like, it's infinitely you can have an infinite number, 256 bits worth of transcludes. That's fine.
Right. So I think that's interesting to me. I want to think about it kind of structurally a little bit. If you have, because on a base level, the idea you're talking about is I am including a direct reference to somebody else's information in my project. But when it comes to how I interact with that information, I'm only ever interacting with my model of it, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing this as if it is actually inside of my project and it's information that's directly under my control.
Yeah, I think that's the key to it's the posture you're taking it from. You're like, I see this and I see my stuff, and I'm going to work to respond to that, as opposed to it needing to almost be me, or like I hold my own perspective at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And these transcludes represent other people's perspectives, and I can compare the perspectives in my own space, and then independently publish my own one, which may diverge or may agree. But that's kind of the switch. Like, in your brain, you can't really think about you and also be you. You're either one or the other. It's a weird. I don't know what you call that, but it's like I can't be me and perceive me at the same time. And that's the difference kind of between transcludes and repos. Repos are being and transcludes are seeing.
Right. I think that a really interesting case to try and draw here would be I want to interact with another application that is, from my perspective, out of date with the software that it's running versus the one that I want it to run.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to allow it to like interact with me through its API, but I'm going to treat it as if it's running the newest version of its own API.
Okay. That doesn't sound possible, but I don't quite see the leverage you're getting from that.
I just mean it's like I believe that most applications that get published into the world like have an intent. They have an intent what they're trying to do.
Yep.
And when they get updated to newer versions, this is this like ultra political, difficult process, right? Yep. That like I might be stuck on an old desktop application when the company's been publishing their web version for 10 years or whatever.
Right.
Or like, you know, I might have security constraints that I don't want to interact with these people, even though the service they're providing me is really valuable, right?
Right.
If only they could grab that library and update it inside of their own system. You know, like this is kind of akin to the idea of like with the blockchain, you can always play back the state that led to the failure and then work on the failure and fix it.
Yeah.
But you can be doing that live with other people that are refusing to adhere to your constraints with what you need to build. So you could literally consume other people's work as like a library that you're using inside of your thing and still patch it at the same time with whatever you wanted on top of it.
Right. But that's sort of like, that's only possible if you got the Git snapshot as opposed to the compiled dist folder in NPM that's been transpiled and splattered down. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Yeah. That, and I mean, I just like the idea that there's this extra level of like interpreting from here's the real thing at this hash and here's the thing that I am witnessing at, or like that I want to be at this hash, basically, right?
Oh, like what's that? You're aliasing the transclude. You're saying that this is the authoritative transclude, and I am now aliasing it to this version that I want to see there, and then I am proceeding as though the world is like this. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And you have full visibility into the inner structure of the thing that you're interacting with. So if you don't like how some piece of it is happening, like just don't accept it. And like you can accept that history has moved forward for that component of the system.
And
like
independently. You could share that back to the publisher and be like, hey buddy, I found utility from this fork. And that's a case where transclude forking would have occurred. And they can then look at what you patched versus what they've got and see if it can be reconciled in some way.
Yeah, it's really like you're saying you have history in your repo, which is vertical, and transcludes, which is horizontal. And I'm trying to think of how you like just moving anywhere around in that phase space, right? Like different lineages, different like interpretations of what somebody else is doing. Like
it's fucking wild. Like it's such a simple thing, but it allows you to navigate anywhere.
And I think it also gives you like a really strong mental test for whether you're putting the feature in the wrong spot. Is that horizontal vertical breakdown is like, it's very easy to write things that are mixing those two directions, right?
Yep.
Like, but you say that like horizontal things belong in the horizontal space and vertical things belong in the vertical space. And you can make very strong statements by saying, is this a feature that's already covered by the fact that this is a repo and it has a linear or like a DAG history or whatever, right? And
yeah, that's right. Because if you do it correctly, you get a lot of power out of the substrate. Because it seems like philosophically, it seems that Git covers 100% of the information processing meta concerns that you should have, like provenance, security, change control, resilience. those kinds of things are not really things that belong in the application concern. It's like you
Mhm.
should just expect that of your substrate.
Mhm.
And if you design it right, then you inherit these things without sort of redoing it. And so like I look at protocols like Blue Sky and other types of all kinds of different protocols, and they've all got like the notion of a commit, the notion
Mhm.
of history or versioning, the notion
Yeah.
of, and they got all these things, and I'm like, do we really need to re-implement versioning? Do we really need to re-implement branching? A lot of the things, it's like, just fucking use the Git one. Like, it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, all of those federated social networks are working on the same like 5 problems that are like already solved, right?
Yeah. So,
Whereas they're like the hard problem here is the political problem of like I, I just don't want to engage with that actor. I don't want to like, or I do, but I don't really necessarily want them to have unfettered access into my system, right?
yeah. And so, I mean, I think that clever design of the permission system
Yeah.
within, at that point, I'd say that becomes Dreamcatcher, because if Artifact is just like, here's how repos work, and here's how permissions work, and here's how naps work, and here's how
Mhm.
transcludes work, you're free to assemble that in a lot of different ways. And then Dreamcatcher becomes our chosen configuration that we thought were the best design choices for whatever we wanted to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. I can buy that for sure.
Does anything spring to mind to you that about that's sort of a contradiction to what Xanadu was supposed to be?
Yeah, so no, the only thing that ever jumps up for me is I think it's a hole in the Xanadu like proposition that like I never understood how to fix, which is like people will be hostile and they will try to operate outside your system, right? There's like it's very easy to say everything by reference. It's very hard to like recover that behavior when people are trying to act
Yeah,
against
they're
it,
trying to
right?
obfuscate. They're trying to darken the world, and
Yeah.
that should be. I'm not going to say permitted, but it shouldn't be unexpected. Like that should be part of normal operation. And you can even have the best intentions and end up doing that. Like if you need to pack something into a ROM or some small space, you're going to want to strip the attribution off. Like it's
Yeah.
just you know. So you you accept that that's solvable by AI's reverse engineering those links.
It didn't occur to me until you said it that it's like the attribution system is the thing that will like because it's already out there trying to make the connection between people that are on the same wavefront as you put it,
Yeah.
right? It's literally the same problem to like take somebody that's a hostile outside actor that's trying to make themselves look like a
Right.
like a genius that like came from
Right.
nowhere, right?
Right. A provenance thief.
Yeah. Yeah, so I fully believe that like if you can solve one of those problems, you can solve the other.
Okay.
And I also really believe that like a rich system where you've made sure that referencing is as first class as possible in the
Yeah.
system is like the ideal background for that AI to operate in.
Yeah. And then like you can have differing opinions and different probabilistic weights on what the correct reference is. There may not be a solution. We may have lost it forever, but we can certainly have a range of probabilistic outcomes that can be deduced that you at least can't fault any of them logically. And you're like, look, it was either these 10 things, and we may never know
Yeah.
for sure.
There's in fact a really like hard problem in science that can be solved that way. That is like meta-analysis of scientific studies where people might have been approaching them with their own biases, right? Like you're talking about a system that can basically route around the biases.
It should. The global knowledge system should be very much tolerant and even favor biases, because that's where you get that little bit of difference that can spark you off into something else. whereas like the homogenous world is doomed to just be boring and never grow. Like biases shouldn't
It's
be
not even
stamped out.
boring. It's actively hostile, right? It's like everybody needs to go to the polls every 4 years and vote on what they think is the flat consensus reality that they want to live in,
Yeah.
and they keep voting for stupid things, right? It's
Yeah.
like the world is not that, right? The world is like every time you turn your head, you see something completely different.
That's right. Every day changes, and the more you're expected to homogenize every 4 years, the worse you see the world. Instead of being open to change or open to improvement, you kind of shut it out because you must pick.
Yeah, and you let a lot of really hostile people be involved too, right? The people that are going to try and tell you that things are simpler than they are. Like this is probably the origin of conspiracy theories, right? Is that like I want to offer you an explanation that like is a lot easier than just everything is just too crazy and is fucked up in this exact specific way. And instead I'm going to offer you the narrative that like someone is controlling it from the shadows, right?
Yeah, because that's easier.
Mhm.
That's what's the word for it? More efficient energy wise.
Mhm.
Oh well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like it's an exciting idea. I think that like the fact that you've got this thing that is kind of like speaking to all these different really distinct parts of the system with the same language is always something I get excited about.
Okay.
Like,
So all right. So it sounds like I'm not hearing any sort of conflict, pushback, or alerts being raised in your soul about how that model goes. There's nothing like makes you like react or rear back from it. So
no,
I'll just push ahead like it's. I mean, it's good enough to see where it goes. Put it that way.
Mhm.
Whether it solves Xanadu or not is really up to Ted Nelson ultimately. But I would like to put forwards a pitch for it to him. And part of Xanadu was the front end. So I've got this model for making. I started calling them frames, where it's like you can take a transclude that references a Git object that is really just the dist folder of, say, a Vite project or any project, and it loads it. It just loads raw HTML, so it can be completely untrusted. It loads in an iframe, and then it has the artifact signaling in and out. But it's so you can like have this UI, and then you have these frames that load that allow you to show any kind of like it's untrusted graphics, untrusted apps for the UI, and like I don't care, do anything you want. It's in an iframe. I can survive.
Yeah.
And so what we thought was the best thing possible that we could think of to do with that is to try and set up a stock exchange with a special twist. The stock exchange is for agents. And so you can start a company there, but it will be run by a published version of this agent that will control the finances and the key decisions of the company. It basically acts like the C-suite of the company. And so you can go and do whatever you like. You can say whatever, you can fundraise from anywhere you like, but it will be controlled by this agent to make sure you're always in compliance, which makes it very cheap to be in compliance. But maybe that's a story for another day. But so that was all I wanted to cover.
I'm grateful to have the call because it's kind of an exciting idea for sure.
Yeah, I think it solves chain joining, which was always a nightmare. The payload layer, easy. Context for AIs, no problem. All kinds of issues solved by this one very trivial data structure that we already had. Funny enough, it was just sitting there waiting to be named.
And I mean, I guess if it is the transclude idea, like one way you can battle test it is by bringing in lots of people who have thought about that before and making sure that it conforms to everything, right?
Yeah.
Because it's out there, because it's prior art, like you can battle.
Yeah, so I started hauling in everything that Ted Nelson ever said, and running it through O3 and getting it to sort of extract out a spec and a dictionary, and then try and run some sort of theoretical, make a checklist so that the bot can go through and be like solve, fault, solved, something like that. So like you should be able to handle all of the objections using a bot. Like it should be able to process whatever and come up with answers for you. So yeah, anyway, I'll better get back to work, I guess. Sounds like got a thing to build.
Yeah, I mean, let me know how it goes.
Yeah,
demo it to me.
Hopefully, real soon. Codex is dope. Like it does so much for me.
Yeah, it's I haven't had a chance to play with it yet because I haven't had a paid OpenAI account for a bit, but
it's mad, dude. It's so mad. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave you to it.
Okay. Good luck.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. I'm very encouraged by your feedback. That was great. That was great to talk about.
I always enjoy it.
Okay. All right, mate. I'll see you later.
Bye.